Dumelang, Sanbonani, good morning. 2 days left to the election. Are you ready? Is your ID book ready? Have you made up your mind? If not, tune in to this interview. In studio, I have Rise Mzansi. It's led by Sonja Sosibi. He also, he's been quite in business. He's not a politician. He says he's a leader, not a politician. In the studio, I have our premier candidate for Gauteng, Vuyiswa Ramokgopa. This lady came to fame when I saw her video on TV, and she was speaking so passionately about this country, how she wants to see change come on board. Sis Vuyiswa, Dumela, how are you?
Dumela Bafana, and lovely to be on your show. It's an absolute privilege to be here.
No, thank you. Thank you for coming through. But I don't want to go to the premier candidate yet.
Yes.
I want to go to Vuyiswa Ramokgopa. You grew up in Hebrew, Sophia Town. Give us a big background history. Upumapi.
Yeah, so I am a Joburg girl, Gauteng native, born and bred. In fact, third generation. My mother's mother were all born here. So Gauteng rona.
Yo, I'm not Mahaing.
Yeah, no.
Adekotuki.
No, not at all. As Goduki, this is home. And I think that's really shaped, who I've become. I've had 15 years as an entrepreneur. I've worked in the corporate sector, in the non-profit sector. I've built a number of businesses. I have experienced the failure also of businesses that have not have not thrived, And but all in all, I've always been somebody who cares very deeply for this country and who is deeply concerned about socioeconomic inequality, about transformation, about the place of women in society, and very much also about young people. So in everything that I've tried to do, I've tried to use my, space, my privilege, my opportunities that I've been granted to be able to create more for others who are coming behind us.
Just like most young people who today find themselves in politics, they have a history somewhere where they were in COSAS in college or in SASCO in VETS or anywhere. When did your politics start? When did you start feeling the need to get out of your comfort zone in a business sector and say, I want to play a role in this country?
Yeah, so mine was a long time coming. I was never involved in formal politics or within any other party. I've always voted. I've always been a person who votes and who is interested in politics. I studied politics, economics, and philosophy at university. But I took a different path because I've always been, I'm an implementer. Yeah. I'm a person who likes to see action and implementation. And so I wanted to really be in a space where I could effect change immediately, So entrepreneurship was very attractive to me because you get to solve problems and actually empower people in real time. You don't talk about job creation, you actually create jobs. You do it. True. So these are the types of, this is where my life took me. But I think I really became a lot more cemented in my political ideas during my tenure as the CEO of South African Institute of Black Property Practitioners, where the focus of the organization was about driving transformation in the property space and advocating and lobbying for transformation. And so as an organization and as the CEO of the organization, we were very involved on the policy side, working within organized business formations such as the Black Business Council, such as the BRICS councils and such, sitting in NEDLAC and those various forums and making inputs on behalf of Black business. And it became very evident to me that, the challenge that we have is not that they are not brilliant people who are capable and able to make change. The problem is that we sit across the table with political leaders who lack political will to do the things that need to get done to move us forward. So, even if you look at like the public procurement bill, which at least has finally made it to fruition, but it was years of advocacy on the part of the likes of the Black Business Council and other organizations. And you ask yourself, why does Black business need to lobby a quote-unquote Black government for transformation in a country that is 90% Black? Like, what are we doing? Who are we talking to?
It doesn't make sense.
Doesn't make sense. You'd have to fight for just the basics. I was in the property sector. we were fighting till this day. You know, I co-drafted one of the major empowerment policies sitting under Department of Public Works, and at no point, I mean, we wrote this thing 5 years later, it still was not implemented. Sure. By the people who had the power to actually implement these policies. And these are not pie in the sky. These are tried and tested. These are ideas and practical models that have been canvassed throughout industry. But the people who are tasked with implementing were just slow to do it and or lacked political will. And that's really what gave me a sense of clarity that if I really want to see change, I need to be willing to be that change that I want to see.
Part of politics.
Because you can't direct what's happening on the field when you are sitting in the stands.
Yes,
you can cheer, you can, we're all coaches when we're sitting in the stand. We all have a view. But you can only, when the ball is between your feet and you are tasked with actually shooting,
that's when you have real power.
That's when you have real power. And I think that's really what led me to this point.
So then the question would be, at that time, you had DA, you had Action SA, you had all these other political parties that were available at the time.
Yeah.
Why Rise Mzansi? Why didn't you go to maybe another organization?
Yeah. So, I mean, I am a co-founder of Rise Mzansi, and a founding member, obviously. And, you know, before there was a thing called Rise Mzansi, we were a group of people who were just asking ourselves questions and asking ourselves saying, you know, how have we gotten to this point? What is it that is so problematic about South African politics? Because it's not, yes, of course, a big part of it is the governing party.
Yes.
But it's not just the governing party. There's uninspiring and problematic leadership across the board in a number of different parties. And so the question that we asked ourselves was, why is it that politics in general is so unattractive? And why is it that the people who are most capable, you know, are the least willing to get into politics?
Yes, yes.
But the people who are the least capable are seemingly the most willing to go and actually be in that space.
I think it's that line that I was told that politics is a dirty game. So all the smart people, the doctors, the people that are needed in politics went to the other side.
Yes.
And the other guys who were willing to go down that route of, no, I'm going to be a politician and just lead, but they didn't have any knowledge. So I think the dirty game mindset
But
is
it's
the problem.
beyond the dirty game. It's the fact that you operate in an environment that is seemingly so anti-meritocracy, so anti-intellectualism. You can't have constructive discussions anymore. I mean, we all watch Parliament, we watch the local councils. People are taking their shirts off, beating each other up. I mean, ahuna order. And besides that, it just tells you just how the quality of leadership in general has eroded in this country, you know. And we focus a lot on leadership as Rise Mzansi because it is important. Leadership matters. You know, the leadership is the benchmark of a society. Because effectively, the people that we elect, what it says to the world is that these are the people that we think are the best amongst us.
Yeah.
These are the ones that we think represent our views and they encapsulate who we are as a people.
Creme de la creme.
Yeah.
This is our best.
So I'm not naming names, but I'm saying let's just reflect then on the type of political leaders we have and what that ultimately says about us as a people. And I'm saying we can't accept that. We can't accept that. We have to be able to hold ourselves to a higher standard of leadership.
Yes.
Because it is in selecting and electing credible, competent, ethical leaders that we get, you know, a society that actually produces positive outcomes. And that is the core of our issue right now, is that we have, even in the public sector, mind you, public officials, we've got a number of amazing people. There are a lot of people who've made a choice to work in the public sector.
Yeah.
But they themselves get frustrated out of public sector, or they get, you know, they're so scared and unable to even make decisions because they are concerned about being victimized politically and otherwise. And we know of these things. And so that's why for us, the focus and what we believe is our generational mission is to restore the state of leadership in politics.
So in a way, would you say Rise Mzansi was more of, we want to do it ourselves. We don't want to be part of any crew. We don't want to be part of a party that came out of a party. You want to be authentic and original.
No, absolutely. And because it was a big part of it, if you look historically, most of the political parties, the major ones at least, either come about as a breakaway of the ANC as the dominant party, or a breakaway of the DA, which was the official opposition and is the official opposition.
Yes.
So what you then have is a kind of binary view of society. It's like either you must be this side
or that side.
And it's like every time there's a faction that develops in the ANC, we get new parties coming that side. I won't name them. You know them.
Yes.
Same thing with the DA. Every time a leader has an awakening in the DA and realizing they're not going to be leader for very long, they start a party. And so it is this framing of our politics that has gotten us into this deadlock and inability to make progress.
Yeah.
Because the let me say the custodians, we no longer have a central kind of custodian of the South African vision, aspirations, ideals, all of that. We just have this back and forth between these parties, right?
Yes, and the same ideologies.
And the same ideologies informing them both. So it's either you are left or you are right or you're this or you're that. And at some point we had, the ANC, which really occupied the center of South African politics.
True.
And it was able to galvanize people from very different walks of life. You remember in the first government of national unity, you had people from the NP, those verkrampte, serious Afrikaner people. You had people from the labor movement, the SACP, all brought into this thing called a government of national unity. And so this idea of sort of broad church politics and a center of South African politics existed at some point. But unfortunately, over the years, through the ANC's own loss of moral authority in society and its own internal factionalism, we no longer have a center of South African politics. And that is the space that Rise Mzansi set about to occupy. And we were very clear that we are not trying to be on this side or that side. We're actually trying to redefine the center of South African politics with a future-looking view. And
somebody said Rise Mzansi is a youth party driven by young people. It's a new dispensation, if one had to say, of politics, right? The new age of politics, where it's no longer about the radicalism, it's no longer about the rhetoric of land and the socialist ideology is communist, but it's more of a social democrat. So maybe since you are here, give us a clear picture. When I think of Rise Mzansi, should I look at it from the lenses of social democrats? Are we looking at it from a liberal? Give me a picture. What's your ideology and what was your key target market? Was it mainly the youth?
Sure. So you're correct in saying we describe ourselves as a social democratic party, and we are, our ideals and ideas about society are modeled on the social democratic tradition, which does exist in other parts of the world. But it wasn't just our kind of making and thinking about it. In fact, it is our view that is actually the dispensation of South Africans broadly. Like, if you look at our constitution, if you engage with most South Africans on their values and their ideals for society, we are a society that believes in justice, for example. We are a society that believes in human rights.
True.
We are a society that is fundamentally interested in democracy. We believe in democracy. We don't want to be in an autocracy. We're a society that believes in equality. And there may be, of course, some fringes of society that have very extremist views. But our view is that South Africans, by and large, are social democratic in leaning. And the ANC, at least conceptually, sought to be that.
Yes.
What they have then done in terms of the actual implementation of economic policies is a different story. But in ideological leaning, it is our view that we have, as a social democratic party and a movement, we are appealing to the broad majority of South Africans.
Yes.
And so to answer your question, no, we're not just a youth party or a black party or a neoliberal. We're none of those things. We're a party for South Africans broadly. However, I think there is value, and you'll see that in our leadership, in having multi-generational leadership at a national level.
Yes.
So our youngest leader is 21 years old, you know. But what's interesting, you've got literally multiple generations. I am on the horizon to 40.
Just be
I can see 40 in the distance. Our national leader, Songezo Zivi, 48. You know, we've got 28-year-olds in our national leadership. So you've got this kind of tiered thing.
Yeah.
And I think what a lot of people forget is that at the dawn of our democracy, 30 years ago, these very people that are now pensioners, 70-year-olds, they were our age. They themselves were young.
Yeah.
When Tito Mboweni came and was the first governor of the Reserve Bank, he was in his mid-30s. Thabo Mbeki, I think, was only just 40.
Yes.
Early 40s. Same thing with Cyril Ramaphosa and co. No one called them a youth party.
Yeah.
They were a party of
people.
people who were at the prime of their political lives and working lives, and rightfully so, because that's when you've got the energy, you are forward-looking and visionary enough, and you can. So at a certain point, you can't have a country being led by octogenarians, 70-year-olds.
Yes.
You can't. And I'm not saying this to be ageist, but you know, it's important to have people who have more life ahead of them than they have behind them.
You remind me of someone who said, how can you make decisions about the future that you might not even be
in? That you are likely to not be in. And it's important, though, as I started by saying, to have that intergenerational knowledge transfer. We have 70-year-olds that are part of our National Leadership Collective.
Yes.
The founder of Gibbs University, Prof. Nick Benadel, is one such person. And he's able to share with us stories. He was part of, the UDF movement of the late 80s. He's still fighting for this country today. But he's able to do so in a kind of advisory capacity.
Yeah, as an elder.
He's not on the list to go to parliament at age 70.
Yeah.
But he sits in our leadership collective and he's able to give us a bit of grounding, even ourselves, when we have certain ideas and we want to put things forward.
You said it very well when you started that you are a Joburger. You grew up in Joburg, you're a Gauteng child, and you are coming in as a premier of Gauteng. What would you say are the 5 key issues that maybe resonate with you that you would like to change in your first 100 days? First 100 days in office.
Look, I'm a person who likes to speak the truth. The truth is that it's very difficult to undo 2 decades of decay and rot in 100 days.
True.
Realistically, in 100 days, 100 days is three months, guys. You are really just. I think what will be important for me in the first 100 days will be to engage with all of the key stakeholders, and I'm talking about various community-based organizations, different tiers of government, different institutions in government, to actually just align them to our vision. But to answer your question, these are some of the areas, obviously, that are top priority for us. Reigniting and reviving the economy of Gauteng. Gauteng is still the economic capital of our country. And if we want to deal with the unemployment issue nationally and obviously provincially, we have to start here. Number 2, it's obviously the most populated part of our country. 16 million people, thereabout. The highest level of inward migration happens in Gauteng.
Yes.
And so managing, spatial planning and how and where we actually locate people and locating them close to business, places of work, close to places of opportunity, and planning that in advance. And I say this very specifically because whether you build houses or not for people, they will locate themselves where they need to be.
True.
So every time you build a luxury development somewhere, you will notice that an informal settlement pops up nearby. Because nobody...
That's where the economy is.
That's where the economy is. And if we don't plan for that and create mixed income housing and mixed income communities, we will never be able to deal with the issue of informal settlements. So for me, in a generation, I want us to be bold enough to commit to eradicating informal settlements. It's not a pipe dream.
Yes.
It's something you plan.
It's possible.
It's possible. You plan it by saying how many people do we have in formal housing? How many people do we have in informal housing? do an audit of the land that you have available, see where that land is. Some of it is in public hands, others is in private hands.
Yeah.
And use your powers as a government to either expropriate land that is needed for strategic reasons. So be it housing, be it infrastructure development, building new roads, building new cities. And that power exists, by the way. So our view is that we would definitely do that if need be. But number two, it's also mostly about planning the growth of the city. So what has happened in our province is that we've been growing, but we've been on autopilot.
Yeah.
In fact, between this 2022 census and the 2011 census, we have grown by 3 million people.
Sure.
That could have been foreseen. Now people want to act surprised that, oh, wow,
we didn't plan for this.
We should, now we must deport everyone. No. This is what cities do. The more successful and thriving a city is, the more it grows.
It expands.
So what you need to do is ensure that you have the correct zoning rights allocated to high growth areas of the province and of the cities. Work collaboratively with the various municipalities to ensure that that is happening. And build accordingly. So, I mean, that's number two. There's a few others which we can talk through.
I'm gonna go back.
And just the last one on that is critical to this is public transport.
Oh yeah.
Because it's not about having everybody live in Sandton, but it's about ensuring that wherever you live, you have access to cheap and to affordable and reliable public transport that can get you to where you need to go, so that you can actually make a living.
I'm going to go back because I've had many political parties here on the issue of employment. Gauteng is what people think of. I'm going to go back to look for a job.
Absolutely,
right? It used to be Gauteng Maboneng.
Yeah.
Everybody's giving me a number. I've had 4.3 million jobs. I've had 2 million jobs. What's your number? How many jobs can you expect from you in Gauteng?
I want to make a very big differentiation between work opportunities, which are short-term part-time jobs, and actual sustainable jobs, right? Long-term real jobs.
Okay.
So we've put a commitment of 600,000 real jobs over a period of 5 years.
Okay.
Which is in fact, to be honest, it was a very conservative target. And it's a target, and just to give you a sense, I mean, 600,000 jobs sounds like a lot, but just to give you a sense, in 2022, load shedding alone, just load shedding, cost us 300,000 jobs as an economy. Okay?
True.
In Q1, 2024, now, we actually lost 399,000 jobs.
Sure.
Okay? I'm giving you a sense of the quantums. Now, that's just in Q1. Now, these are, so load shedding has an impact, obviously, on companies, their ability to run, their bottom lines, their profits. People start retrenching when the when the costs go up, etc.
Yes.
So if you can deal with just some of these basic things, like stable electricity supply.
Yes.
Crime and safety, for example, is another issue that really affects businesses and business owners.
Yes.
Before you start doing like magical things, just dealing with the basics. Infrastructure, ensuring that there's water and steady water supply. My hairdresser, for example, is a young black woman. She's been running her business for 15 years, 10 years, I'm saying. She employs 7 people.
Yeah.
When there is no water, she has to close her doors.
Certainly, yes.
And those 7 people can no longer be fully employed. So my point is that just dealing with the basics already will give us a big uptick before we even start doing the sexy things. So our sense is 600,000 jobs in 5 years is a combination of us fixing the basics, but also us doing some very critical things in terms of investing in infrastructure, critical network infrastructure.
Yes.
Number 2, actively supporting small businesses with low-cost capital so that they can grow and thrive. You know, average normal businesses, and I can speak from my own experiences.
Yes.
It is virtually impossible to walk into even a development funding institution such as your NYDAs or your NEFs and just get funding. they will ask you for all manner of things. Your blood
Do
type,
you qualify?
your blood type, your 18 months bank statements. No, okay, not 18 months, but you know what I'm saying. So,
Yeah.
So we have a misalignment between the funding that's available for small businesses and the actual businesses themselves. During COVID time, for example, there was a fund that was made available, I think a 200 million rand loan scheme.
Yes.
But that it was run through the banks. So your average SMMEs and your informal traders, etc., could not access that 200 million rand loan guarantee scheme.
So if I'm getting you right, it's more about creating an environment that will be able to create jobs on its own. So if you make the environment more open, cut the red tape, and that way, that's how we can create more jobs. Not necessarily saying this is 2 million jobs we are creating, but it's basically more of let's start first by dealing with the basics, and then where business can thrive and people can get jobs, and there is some sort of
yes. So I mean, it's important to be honest with voters. There's no political party that creates jobs.
True.
The only jobs you create are the ones that sit on your own payroll. Okay?
Yes.
So there are jobs, of course, that the state itself can create. And for example, hiring unemployed doctors is one such way. Yes. There is no reason why someone who is qualified to be a doctor should be sitting unemployed when there is actually budget available. But that budget is just getting reallocated and used for other things.
My second question to you would be, I've not really heard your view on this. Gauteng province, as we know, is quite flooded with illegal immigration, CBD on its own, or with hijacked buildings that are, some of them, they're catching fire.
Yeah.
How do we deal with illegal immigration under your government? Do you deport? Do you naturalize? What is your way around it?
So, I mean, I just want to say, as someone who was born in Hillbrow, and who grew up for many years playing in Joubert Park, that was my hood. It has been devastating to watch what has now happened to what was once a glorious CBD, and it was revered worldwide, actually. Some of the best architecture in terms of the buildings. And to see what has happened over the years is really sad. But in saying that, it also hasn't happened overnight. This started a good 30 years ago. With the first wave of capital flight, there was I think the government of the day just did not take appropriate measures to ensure that they incentivize capital to actually remain in the CBD, because you do need a mix of big businesses, small businesses, and residents to ensure that an economy of a city stays afloat. So coming back to your question, our view is that it's a mixed approach. What we have a problem with in this country is management of immigration and management and actually implementation of our own immigration laws.
Yes.
We have the laws. We really do. But what you actually see is a lot of the loopholes come from, one, corruption. So people who are sitting inside state institutions like Home Affairs, people who are working in these border control posts are themselves the primary people who are involved in selling permits and getting people in and out illegally.
True.
So that needs to be clamped down on as a matter of urgency. And there needs to be really harsh consequences for people who engage in those activities. But number two is also on work permits. There's nothing being done to employers who employ people who don't have work permits.
Yes.
If you don't have a work permit, you should not be working in South Africa. And it is very easy for any government, for the mandated government institution to ask for accountability from employers. Who is on your payroll?
Yes.
You saw just now with the George fire. Now, there's clearly a registered property developer or construction company that has employed people who are non-South African and don't have work permits. Those types of things need to be dealt with harshly. And last but not least, as I'm saying, that the laws that we have must be enforced. If you are here illegally, you are not allowed to be here. You must go and regularize yourself through the channels that we have. Number two, if you are here and perhaps your permit has expired or some such, you need to be given an opportunity to rectify your status. Because we are not anti people from other countries.
Yes.
There's an issue with people who we can't identify.
Yeah.
And again, coming back to the earlier conversation, it hampers our ability to plan as a country. So we need to understand how many people are migrating in and out of Gauteng, but also of the country, so we can plan accordingly. And our view is that it's a management issue. And that's why I liked how you phrased the question. You said, under a Rise government, because fundamentally this is an issue of people who are sitting in the driver's seat who have no will to do this work. And we need to do it. It's no question about it.
No, because I think I'm asking this as someone who grew up in Hebrew, and as you have seen that South Africans there's this rile. Whenever somebody, like now there are parties that are literally campaigning on the issue of illegal immigration.
Of course.
So it shows that it's a burning issue amongst most South Africans. So if I got you correctly, it's more about having border control management systems in place and ensure as well that the laws that we have, we enforce them. If you're here illegally, we deport.
Absolutely. But what I will say is that the difference between, I'd say, our view is that, one, we are not driving an Afrophobic, anti-poor agenda as Rise Mzansi. And I think we must be very aware of those dog whistles. You know, people like to pretend that they are just talking about the rule of law, but they are only talking about a specific segment of society. They are not protesting outside Chinatown.
True.
There's a Chinatown everywhere. In every major metropolis, there's a Chinatown.
And no
one is protesting there.
That. I think also with the issue of small, medium enterprises, what they call the township economy, that right now has been taken over by Pakistanis and Somalians and Ethiopians, right? And it's become a monopoly per se. Most of our people can't even compete with that, right? So the question then becomes, if we empower the local township economy, do we do it at the detriment of these small, medium enterprises? Do we somehow regulate to which business can be owned by South Africans and which business cannot be owned by foreigners? Is that how you're going to work around it? Have specific regulation to say, as a foreigner, you can't have this business. As a foreigner, you can't do that. How do we empower the local business while ensuring that it has a competitive advantage in the space?
So, as I'm saying, those laws already exist. You can't just walk into a country and set up a business and trade and know-how, sell illegal products or expired products. We are not enforcing our laws. The police themselves are on the take, and they get paid by a lot of these, call it syndicates. I'll call them syndicates because they do work together. So I'm saying that is our fundamental challenge. South Africa is a free-for-all for anyone who wants to come and do nonsense in our country, because we are on autopilot. We have no policing. We have no enforcement of bylaws. We have nothing happening. And if you look at parts of our country, I mean, where there's will to actually police, those problems get dealt with quickly, and they can be resolved. But we've created this impression that, people who are now here and trying to make a living for themselves, we must demonize them. But ultimately, I'm saying we, I'm taking responsibility, but I'm saying the government of the day has failed to enforce its own laws.
Definitely. And I think when you look at it, you're right when you say we have laws, there are policies that are in place, but it's an issue of implementing. And that implementation part usually takes 5 years.
Let me give you an example.
It takes 10 years.
I mean, the food safety thing. Come on, guys. It's not rocket science. You're not allowed to sell expired food.
It's just example. Clear thing.
So a food inspector should be able to walk in, make a determination. The person must get sanctioned, or the place must get closed down. You're done.
It's simple.
It's actually not. It's not complicated, but that work just doesn't get done.
My also the issue that most South Africans also have, Premier, is the issue where I live in Gauteng. And I have a security company looking over my house.
Yeah.
I have to get all the security means to protect myself. I don't feel safe anymore in Gauteng.
Yeah.
We have the police, we have Mapanyaza, we have all of these interventions by the state.
Yeah.
But yet, we don't, as you spoke about law
feel
enforcement, there is no law enforcement at all. do we continue to increase the force, or do we change it by maybe putting in harsher sentences? How do we go about it?
Yeah, so I think it's a kind of a three-pronged approach. The first pillar is really about dealing with the root causes of crime.
Yes.
Because we live in a country that has the highest inequality. We know this.
Yeah.
We have massive issues of unemployment, and we have a scourge of drug addiction and substance abuse as well in our communities. And I'm not saying it's the fault of people on drugs. I'm just saying this is the fact. There's a lot of petty crime that happens because of people who are trying to feed their habits, right? So we have to address that, number one. That's the feeder. But coming to the questions the question you've asked around policing, it doesn't help to just add to the number of unqualified, incompetent police.
Yes.
You and I, I'm sure you yourself have experienced going to try and report a crime.
Yes.
And the person sitting across the table from you can barely even write the statement that you are asking them to write.
True.
And if you are lucky enough to get the statement written, then you must hope that, fine, there'll be a docket, and that docket won't somehow get lost between the time that you open it and the time that it needs to find its way to prosecution. And in that space alone, a lot of crimes go missing.
Yeah.
And a lot of criminality goes unprosecuted or undealt with. Now, that's just dealing with the capacity issue, capabilities of police. But then you also come to the corruption itself. It's a fact that we have an issue of serious corruption and petty, I'm saying. This thing called drink. It's not a small thing. There are policemen who are literally subsidizing their lifestyles because of cold drink.
Yeah.
And I have witnessed situations where you've got a whole roadblock of metro police. 7 of them are here. They're all standing. A crime happens across the street.
They won't move there.
They won't move to go and catch somebody whose phone has just been stolen across the street.
It's sad, yeah.
Now, how does adding more of them solve that problem? It doesn't.
So it's the culture.
So there has to be an overhaul, both of the actual quality of police that we have and the training and just the capacity that they have to actually do their job. But there also needs to be a modernization. It is ridiculous that in 2024 we are still dealing with paper dockets. We need to digitize that whole system. Dockets cannot go missing. So ours is to saying we need to also digitize that system so fewer cases can go missing. And then number 3 is the prosecution part of it. Yeah. Because that's the other part. People know that even if the case gets opened, even if it goes as far as it goes.
If you are a millionaire, you are covered.
You will be very lucky. You will be very lucky. In fact, let me use rape as an example. When it comes to rape cases in this country, only on average 10% of cases that get reported actually get prosecuted.
Sure.
And you must remember there's chronic underreporting. So we don't even know how many are unreported, right?
Yes.
But of those that get reported, only 10% make it to prosecution. So if you are a rapist or an aspiring rapist, South Africa is a great place to be because the odds are stacked in your favor. You are very unlikely. So we have to deal with that. We have to be a country where there are consequences for actions, and it has to start at the top. It cannot just be the petty criminals that get caught. When the biggest criminals, in fact, the mafia bosses of them all, are the very people at the top.
We had the Zondo Commission. Everybody went there to testify, and to this day, no prosecution whatsoever.
Absolutely.
So also politicians, they seem to be quite immune to the law itself.
And that's why I come back to the issue of leadership. Because how do you convince me, as somebody who's genuinely struggling, is unemployed and can't feed myself, how do you convince me not to steal when people who are earning millions a year are stealing billions every year?
It's sad.
So if the fish rots from the head, as they say, and we have a culture of impunity. We've got a culture where corruption has just become acceptable. And the biggest perpetrators of that are our leaders. And in a Rise Mzansi government, we believe that leaders must be held to the highest standards.
True.
You don't get to steal 5 rand or 10 rand. And we must make an example out of the most powerful people in society so that everybody understands exactly what time it is.
Definitely. Before I just let you go, we just heard lately, I don't know whether it's electioneering or what, that Eskom is doing very well. Eskom is doing very well. We have electricity, and it's a lie that on the 29th, load shedding will make a U-turn. The question is, do you believe that we are going ahead, or this load shedding is just an election ploy?
Well, I have listened carefully to many of the leaders in the governing party, and they have been very clear that they're not committing that load shedding is gone. They have actually said we are entering the peak season now of demand because winter's only starting.
So they're preparing you.
So they are psychologically preparing us. And they've said it repeatedly. The Minister of Electricity has said it. The President has said it. That they do not know what the peak season holds and what the future holds. And I think we must listen when people talk, okay?
Yeah.
I don't know if there'll be load shedding on the 30th of May, like some would say. But I would say that load shedding is definitely not behind us because there are structural reasons why we have load shedding. Fundamentally, our demand exceeds our supply.
True.
And so until we have a credible resolution for that, we are going to find ourselves going through various stages of load shedding.
So will Rise support the IPPs to introduce the green as the new plans around power?
Well, we're advocating for a hybrid energy solution. We would love to see ourselves transitioning to greener, cheaper energy.
Sure.
Because renewable energy, particularly solar energy, is a lot cheaper.
True.
For the user. And so we have said that one of the things we'd prioritize is household solar and actually having that be a government subsidized program of putting rooftop solar on the houses, on the rooftops of particularly low income houses, so that they can reduce the burden of paying for electricity. But what that also does is it puts less pressure on the demand, because what we also see now, for the record, is that the energy availability factor is impacted productively by the fact that a lot of people have gone onto rooftop solar.
Yes.
So even your big malls, shopping centers, and a lot of the households we know in the higher income areas have moved onto rooftop solar. So there's less demand on the grid. Now we need to roll that out massively to all households in South Africa.
Yes.
Whilst we work on actually getting our power stations up to scratch and up to capacity to be able to support the industrial development that we need, because we do need to have industrial development. We need cheap and consistent electricity to be able to do that. And so we are advocating for a hybrid.
Perfecto. I'm going to go into health. As you know, our hospitals, if you leave in the morning, you come back at night. They are flooded, and the service also very quite poor. But now there's a new thing called NHI, right? So everybody believes this is going to be the solution to all our problems.
Sure.
Your view on the healthcare sector of this province and as well as NHI?
Yeah, so NHI is definitely not a silver bullet to all of our healthcare problems. We have multi-levels of problems, the most significant of which being local access to to good quality primary healthcare. And what does that mean? That means within 15 minutes of the home of every South African or every citizen, there should be a local clinic wherein you can access the full range of primary health care and an expanded range as well. For example, mental health facilities, rehabilitation facilities. They should be within reach, as well as primary health care that can actually deal with what we believe is the biggest chunk of demand on our healthcare sector. The problem that we have is people don't have those facilities close by. And so they end up having to, one, travel far to access healthcare, but two, overloading the tertiary healthcare system.
Yes.
And now, in a sort of last-minute attempt, another admission of failure on the part of this government, they are now saying, okay, let's also involve private facilities. It's fine, but the private facilities are still not close to where people live.
Yes.
And they themselves, even if I live, if I live an hour away from the closest private facility or the closest public facility, my problems still remain.
Yes.
So our view is that there needs to be an increased focus on primary healthcare, localized primary healthcare. Number 2, hospital management and leadership is critical.
Yes.
Some of the biggest failures and scandals that we've seen in our healthcare sector, in the public sector in particular, have been because of the failure of hospital CEOs and management. There's massive mismanagement happening in that space. And in fact, if you look at the health budget of Gauteng, one of the biggest line items is the medical litigation costs.
Yes.
And the cost of malpractice, actually. And so instead of spending those millions on actually healing people, that money is being spent on lawyers' fees because of malpractice and poor management of the actual institutions. NHI doesn't solve that. So we are saying as Rise Mzansi, we believe there should be universal healthcare. We believe that, in fact, every single resident of this province should be able to have access to high-quality public healthcare. Nobody loves paying for medical aid.
True.
It is a grudge purchase for everybody.
Yes.
If I could cancel my medical aid today, I would.
Yes.
But what I need is a public healthcare system that functions and where I know that I'm not going to die on the table just because I'm giving birth. And so for that, you need proper leadership. You need proper management of hospitals, and you need proper primary healthcare facilities so that we don't overload the tertiary healthcare.
Okay, we are about to wrap up now. Every party has their own grant that they have offered. ANC is leading with 350 grants. UI, what's the name? Action SA says you're going to give UBIS around 750, 1 point something. There is money that has been thrown around here.
Yes.
What's your number?
Look, I mean, you'll remember I said we were a social democratic party.
Yes.
So we believe actually that you need to have an adequate social safety net that cuts across a number of different forms of social support.
Yeah.
In our view, the grants that we have right now are actually inadequate for many reasons. One, because, for example, we have a massive issue of hunger in our country.
Yes.
It goes unnoticed because it's actually, for many people, it's a thing of shame. They don't talk about the fact that they're hungry.
Yeah.
They don't talk about the fact that they often go many days without eating.
True.
And as we've seen, many women that we have now been experiencing are literally killing themselves and their children because they're hungry.
Yes.
And so one of the things we've said is we need a direct intervention to deal with food
Yes.
and malnutrition for everyone.
Basically, it's
For everyone. So we've said we want to have a food voucher system wherein no matter whether you are young or old or this or that, if you don't have enough money to buy food, you must be able to access a state-sponsored food voucher, walk into any retailer and buy food outside of the other social grants you may be getting. Because the 2,080 rand that our grandmothers are getting is not even sufficient to cover a basket of food
true.
for a family of 4.
Yes.
So it starts there. Let's deal with the food separately. Then we come to the issue of single mothers, which is a key issue for us. 45% of households in our country are headed by single mothers.
Yeah.
45%.
Sad, yeah.
So, and that's it's not our design. We didn't make up that. It's a fact. It's a fact that our history has resulted in a case where we have an issue of 45% of mothers
Raising their
and
children.
45% of households being headed by single mothers. So we're saying we need a special, so we've put forward a proposal for a tax rebate for what we call the missing middle.
Yes.
Because there are a lot of women, mothers in particular, that are low income earners. They do earn an income, but it's not enough, actually. It's not even close to enough to feed children or be on a single income, pay the school fees, buy the uniform, do all the things that you need to do. So we are saying we need to put money back in the pockets of these single mothers and ensure that they're able to benefit from a tax rebate.
Okay. Okay,
Yeah.
sorry, there was a sound that disturbed
bit of
me
background
there.
noise.
A bit of background noise in my ears. I'm wondering. Okay, it could be that.
Yeah.
I'm
And
gonna.
so those are some of the things. And then obviously on the actual existing grants, our view is that they should be expanded. The 351 is not a real thing in our minds, and doesn't actually solve any issues that we have. The old age grant, we actually think should be expanded. But ultimately, we can't be a country of people on welfare.
True.
The idea is that that number should be decreasing every year. In a generation, it should be a minority of the population that are dependent, not 27 million people. You know, it's a shocking number.
So, do you think that maybe the best idea would be to give grants per household than to give each? Rather say, okay, per household we're going to give 3 basic income grant, and that is a amount that the family could use. Or do you think maybe giving Gogo 2,000, children 500, and then Bafana there 350, and whoever single mother will also get something? Do you think should rather have a uniform basic amount, maybe 4,000 or whatever, that could be ensure that the people, than to give grants to individuals, to rather take the household approach?
Look, I mean, I think that's a valid suggestion. Our view is that every household has its own dynamics.
Yeah.
You know, and so it's not for us to determine the household dynamics. You may find or this household is led by malume unka cheleta grant kaofela wa yinwa. I'm just saying.
You are right. There's a seaport that will be like, hey,
yeah, you end up having those issues. So, you know, our view is that, and by the way, in putting forward our interventions around single mothers, it is actually a household grant, because in reality, and if you look at the spending patterns and the data, it tells us that the majority of income earned by single mothers goes towards household expenses. It is groceries, it is school and transport. Most households spend 40% of their income on transport. Kiri transport zabana, it's your own transport to get to work, etc., etc. These are not people who are building wealth off of their 6,000 Rand a month salary. They're surviving. So one, that is going to the household, but two, is actually going right back into like consumption spending, which in itself is positive for the economy.
I'm going to wrap it up with this last question, then you go straight to the closing. The question is, the Gen Zs have not been voting, or some of them are not even registered to vote.
Yeah.
As Rise Mzansi, you came across as a very youth-friendly, attractive party. And the question would be, what are your hopes? What are expectations from the Gen Z? Do you think you've done enough work to draw them to the polls?
Look, I think, you know, just looking at the IEC's own statistics, 18 to 25-year-olds, I think, make up only 9% of registered voters. So, you know, only those who are registered can vote, right? So that's a starting point for us. So the baseline for us is saying, have we been able to inspire or attract, you know, the few that are in the net? And I think what we've done well is to redefine what politics looks like, sounds like, behaves like. And we've said we don't have to be held hostage by liberation politics. You know, and we are grateful for history and for how we've gotten here, but we don't have to be shackled by history. And as a new generation of leaders, we can redefine our own path. And I think that is something that resonates a lot with young people who have felt often alienated from our politics, because it doesn't talk to us, and it doesn't talk to
the history of Lusaka.
Yes, like
Konto,
and those are it's important to be grounded in your history, but not to be shackled by it.
True.
And so I think we will really start to see the dividends of this election and of the work we've done in the next election, to be honest. But I have seen just our volunteers, our organizers, the people that our ground forces in general tend to be younger people. And so they also attract other younger people. And I think that will show, you know, we will see the fruits of that.
Perfecto. Premier Vuyiswa Ramokgopa, the camera is behind me. The people of Gauteng are waiting, or South Africa is waiting. Why should I, as a voter with my ID on Wednesday, why should I choose Rise Mzansi to take over governance? The camera is right there. Shoot.
So we have an opportunity in this election to choose new leaders, to not be defined by our history, to be defined by a future that is possible where everyone can be safe, where we can choose equality, where we can be prosperous, and where we can be a united country. And Rise Mzansi presents us an opportunity to take ownership and take charge of our future and to build the kind of South Africa that we deserve. And all of that can only be anchored by credible, competent leaders who truly have a love for this country, but also have a track record in leading in other institutions, in civil society, in community-based organizations. Rise Mzansi has those new leaders, and we're encouraging people to vote with their hearts and minds and choose new leaders.
That's it from Rise Mzansi. Did she win your vote? Are you voting for Rise Mzansi on Wednesday? You make that choice. Share your comments on the comment section. share the content, and yes, subscribe and like. This was Manifesto Unpacked. I am Bafana Modise. See you on Wednesday as we cast our vote. And hopefully this year, as Rise Mzansi says, 2024 is our 1994. I am Bafana Modise, and this was proudly brought to you by a podcast party. Till next time, ciao ciao.